Good afternoon, everybody. This is Yehudis Schamroth, nurse anesthetist and acupuncturist from Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel. Thank you for joining me on Wellness Wednesdays. It's a monthly program that I do to examine all topics and explore all topics health and wellness related. So if you look back on my YouTube channel, you can see all kinds of interviews of interesting people who are specialists in everything from physical therapy to nutrition to yoga and education and visual health and all kinds of aspects of health. And today we're going to talk about another kind of health, which is very, very important to us, and that's our children's educational health. So I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Hanna Baer, and I'm going to bring her on right now. Just want to tell you people that I'm still working over the next couple weeks until Rosh Hashanah, and you can see that I am, I will put this up here later on, I guess, rbsacupuncture.com, and it's Ramat Beit Shemesh, but I also work in Jerusalem and surrounding areas. Hanna, let me just find her bio here and bring her on. Okay, hi, Hanna. Hello there.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Hanna, her name is Hanna Baer. Hanna has spent the last 25 years helping children fall through the cracks to find and help them discover the world where they can learn. And in order to find answers with pregnancy, birth, childhood development and skills and emotional coping skills, auditory processing, and all of those need to be addressed. Hanna has given workshops to teach upcoming teachers and their parents to develop skills to help their students learn better and figure out why the child's not succeeding, and to help work in a collaborative way to resolve behavioral issues. Hello, Hanna. I want to just let you do most of the talking today because I'm so interested in your topic. And tell me where you're from and how long you've been in Israel and how you got interested in childhood education.
It's so funny when I hear you read my bio and you say 25 years, which is true. I'm like, 25 years already. Wow, where does the time go? I'm originally from Holland. I made Aliyah. I moved to Israel in 2000. Then 3 years later, moved with my husband to Canada. And then in 2017, we came again back to Israel to stay this time. But originally, I'm from Holland, so that is the accent that you hear.
Beautiful accent. Okay.
Thank you. And we're based in Jerusalem. We, like you see behind me, the decoration. I'm sitting in our own clinical space, which is really lovely to be able to receive kids here in our kids. I have to say it's children and teens, because we work with kids from about 5-6 years old till 18-year-old. Although I have to admit that I'm also working with a 24-year-old over Zoom, because we work both private in face-to-face, and we work with kids on Zoom, which means that I'm working with kids in Canada, and I'm working with kids in Italy, and I'm working with kids in the United States, which is absolutely lovely. Yeah, really nice.
Okay, so tell us about your educational background and how you decided that you would start. You have to tell me what the name of your business is and what you actually do for the kids and for the parents.
I'm an educational therapist, and I'm the founder, together with my husband, of NeuroFun Whole Child Therapy. It is really our own program, how we have combined all our skills, because one of the things that we really strongly believe in is that you cannot help children by only working on one aspect. Like if a child is having emotional issues, to only look at the emotional issues and not look at learning difficulties and not look at nutrition and not look at how the body works, you don't really create permanent change. We always say our goal is really to work ourselves out of a job. I have to add that I am also, because I always forget to put that in the bio, I'm also the chairwoman of the professional organization of brain stimulation method Beyond Therapists in Holland, which is the method that we really use to work with the physical part of the difficulties that we see in children. I started doing this out of sheer frustration. I started as a teacher in special education, and I felt that I never got my fingers really behind what the problems were. I felt I was always working with the symptoms, always really looking at, okay, this child can't read, and started to then get trained to look at reading difficulties. But I felt like I'm working with the reading difficulties, but I know that there's much more going on with this child, which means that at one point I was just so fed up that I had a burnout, actually, and because of that ended up in Israel with Professor Feuerstein, who has really broken down how we learn. And it's like a domino effect. If we need to have all these skills to be able to know how to learn, if there is a domino stone missing, then the rest won't fall, right? Or fall inefficiently. So he really analyzed how we think, how we learn, what the skills are that need to be in place. That was how I started. And at the same time, I had also discovered, because of a daughter of a friend of mine, I had also discovered the brain stimulation method Young, where this is a method that was developed by Mrs. de Jong. Mrs. de Jong had children, and this is in the 80s and in the 70s that she started. She had children that were dyslexic, and in that time, it was still, and Baruch Hashem, that's not the case anymore, but children were very much judged as not being intelligent when they had reading difficulties. And she saw very bright kids, so she didn't believe that they had difficulties. And she was a remedial teacher. And because of her own children, she started to really hunt down, like, what are the methods, what are the ways out there? And she discovered that if you use movement, and she started with finger exercises. When you use movement, you enhance how the nervous system works. So basically what she did, she studied and studied and studied and studied. And I always say where her strength was, is that she wasn't, and I think you'll agree with that one of the disadvantages of how people are trained in the medical world is that they get specialized in only one area. And because of that, they really lose that holistic view. And she was not hampered by that. So she
let me just say there is no holistic view at all. And I can say this from many years of education and experience until today, when I can give many examples of how you can go to a doctor or go to a nurse or go. My own husband's a doctor, and I love him dearly, and he's a great doctor, but he doesn't, and he knows his stuff so well, OBGYN, but you can't talk to him about any alternative or different way of approaching a situation, because he doesn't even understand why you're even discussing it. So like They know what they know. And that's it. But you're right. Holistic is something we have to bring into the whole picture. And I love that you're doing that. And you know
what? I really like the term complementary healthcare, because it's not an alternative. It stands and it exists next to, right? And I feel that is exactly the same as how we think. It's like when children get an Ivchun Didakti, for instance, when children get like an educational assessment done. I am not saying that people should not do that. But for instance, that is something that tests, and then I'll get back to Mrs. de Jong's story, but that assesses where a child is at that moment, doesn't assess what is the potential, what is the learning potential of this child, and what is it that is holding this child back. And then what you often get, and we can go on about that for a long time, because that's the same thing with anybody in healthcare, the moment that you have a diagnosis of any disorder or any difficulty and it gets a name, then very often what you see is that the people around the child and the child itself very often totally identify with that diagnosis. If you have a child that gets a diagnosis of ADHD, then how many times I hear a child say, I cannot do that because I have ADHD. And my answer is, you'll have to do that in spite of your difficulties. And very often the difficulties turn out to be a strength, right? So to get back to Mrs. de Jong, she basically developed based on, and I find it fascinating because basically what she did, she developed all kinds of knowledge that she found through all the disciplines. And some of the things that she said then have now been proven by current science. Like now we talk all the time about how the microbiome, the lining of the intestines, that there's a connection between the gut and the brain. We now even know that the lining of the gut has an effect on the lining of our inner ear, which is auditory processing. So suddenly we discover that auditory processing has to do with what we eat. Who would have thought that not that long ago that we would even think of that, right? Or that our mental health has to do with what we eat. The fact that there are nutritional psychiatrists now in the States, I think, says so much. And obviously, it's not just that. That is why, not only that, you can't address everything only through nutrition. But that is why we set up like this whole child program, because we have all the tools. So I have kids come in that, for instance, have emotional difficulties or have anxiety where it comes to school, and in daily life they're totally fine. And it turns out that they have, when they look at information, and that is not just looking, also when they hear information, they don't look at the whole picture, because they have learned in order to be able to keep up with what the teacher is saying. And these are kids that are very, very, very smart, because we work with typical kids. This kid, just imagine you have a child that has any visual issue or any auditory processing issue, and they are smart kids, they're curious kids, they're in a class and they don't get all the information, but they're still up to a certain age, they're able to keep up. But what they learn in how they learn is that they jump on details, and that we call it blurred and sweeping information. It's like they sweep over the information, miss important details, move on with learning with inefficient information, inaccurate information, start making mistakes and feel bad about themselves, think they are the problem or the idiot, as we put it, and then start failing. And they don't know why.
Can I ask a question? Is this typical of children with only auditory processing, or also maybe kids with ADHD and any mild learning disability or major learning disability? Only the auditory processing kids do that sweeping, or do all kids pick up whatever they can do and then try to work it out?
That's why we don't go with diagnosis
at all.
Like,
not at all.
Totally not. No, totally not. We really look, when a child comes in with ADHD, for instance, I want to know what's happening with this child. And if I have a child who, for instance, was born with the umbilical cord around the neck, or was born very, very fast, then I know, like when you have the umbilical cord around the neck, I know that the signal to sit still or to not move, we are born to move. So the signal not to move has to be stronger than the signal not to move has to be stronger than the signal to move. If that doesn't come strongly through the spine, then the child will jiggle all the time. Does that mean that the child has ADHD, or does it mean that we have to do something about the obstruction in the neck? So for me, the question is always, what has happened with the child? And we go back as far as conception. If I have a child that was born out of a mother that had to take hormones and had to take and there was artificial insemination, and the mother kept throwing up a lot, then there's already, hormonally there is something off that might have to do with the pineal glands, right? Then there is the possibility of mother not having enough iron and having been nauseous a lot. That means that there was not enough nutrition going to this child. And we're not only going.
We do know though that the traditionally, not traditionally, the physiologically, the nutrition goes automatically to the baby, even if the mother is sick. I mean, the mother will get skinny and not do well, but the child, and I mean, generally speaking, I didn't realize that they would suffer that much where you'd see a learning disability. I mean, you're talking about people who are nutritionally deficient, not people who are just throwing up, because that's a common thing, right? people and their
Right,
kids
but
are.
then you can look, but what you see very often is that the child, for instance, if you have a mother who has an immature digestive system, doesn't herself absorb all the food or all the nutrition because of which her body is not. We all come from our mothers, right? Like I know, I can see in myself, I have all kinds of physical issues where I'm thinking, oh yeah, I can see that exactly. That comes from my mom. But my mom was malnutritioned when she was a little kid. So I know that intestinally, for her, things were less than ideal. So to me, it's not a surprise that me and my daughters are dealing with intestinal issues, are dealing with, right? So that
How you do the holistic approach. If you could walk us through what a person, how, first of all, how people find you and who refers to you, and then what kind of process is the intake, and then like the treatment plans, and like do you do all the treatments yourself, or do you get to consult with other professionals, that kind of thing?
I think that let me tell you how people find us and what our process is. Yeah. Because basically what we do, we set up we have people come through us either through our website or because people refer to us, and the people that refer to us are like psychologists or people who have heard about us. I think what we have to be careful with is because we're really working hard with kids, that we don't become the best kept secret because all our attention goes to the kids that we work with and not necessarily in putting our name out. But what is happening is that parents will also refer to us because of the change that they see in their kids. So a lot of at the moment is word of mouth. What happens is when a parent comes to us, we always, with every parent, we have a 30-minute free get to know us session where we talk about their concerns, we talk about their child, we explain what we do, and we really look at that moment if this is a child that we feel we can help, or if we feel like, no, this is totally not the way to go for this child, and then we will refer out to other people. We are working with a number of kids also in schools, and there we work very closely together with the schools and with other therapists that might be working with the child, because we feel in general the more connected the circle around the child is, the better it is, which also means that we take the observations and the opinions of parents very seriously. And I say it on purpose like that because even as a parent, I know by my own experience that very often in schools, parents have the experience they're not being heard. So when we work with their child in the whole evaluation process, we always have an evaluation with any child that we work with, which means that we have 1.5 hour interview of the parents 2 or 3 times with the child. And then we sit with the parents and we tell them our findings and how we feel we can help their child, which gives us a chance to say, this is not a child, because that's very clear that we cannot help. And it gives the parents a chance to say, okay, if this is what your program is, or this is what you propose about my child, we're not going to continue with us. Hasn't happened yet, but that choice is always there.
Okay, question. Sorry, go ahead. Please finish.
And then we continue meeting with the child once a week, and the parents do movement exercises at home to work on the nervous system, and they get nutritional advice, which is how we also try to keep the cost of the program down, because a lot of it is also being done at home by parents.
Wonderful. I was going to ask you, if you don't go by traditional diagnoses, how do you describe to the parents what your findings are? Like, how do you describe it?
Well, we really go into the physical underlying issues that we see. And very often what happens is that first of all, we get parents in that are parents that come to us, are parents that in and of itself are not happy with immediately giving their kids medication. We're not saying that we're against medication, but we feel very strongly it's not the first route to take. So very often the parents that come to us feel like, wait, we have tried already an approach that works totally with the diagnosis and it's not working, or we're missing a part about what they're saying about our child. So what we do is we explain what we see, and because we work with the whole child, we're able to connect the dots. So very often what happens to a child, to a parent, is that they see that what is to them symptoms or things that they didn't know was connected to one other part of their child, that because we can connect the dots, suddenly they see the whole and the whole child. And what you very often get because of that is that if a child is having very difficult behavior, and you can explain to a parent the larger context or why a child is responding like that, then you very often see that the parent's attitude to the child's behavior changes, because it's like they can see it with more compassion. So, and because you look at your own child with more compassion, very often the negative spiral of worrying or like clashing with each other, or a parent all the time saying, do your homework, instead of working with the child about what the child needs in order to be able to do their homework,
Right.
That changes. So we also coach parents.
Wow.
But
so how many employees work with you? How many? Is just you and your husband, or do you have a staff?
At this moment, it's just me and my husband. We hope that at one point we get to the point of training people, but it means for us making a choice of, okay, our hours are all filled up with working with children, right? And thank goodness we have many kids that come in, but on the same time, it's also, wow, there are so many kids that need help. It's
right. If you're the only game in town, then it's going to be hard to reach the masses. Okay, I would like to invite you to walk me through two things. One, a parent, let's say, has an ADHD. They're called ADHD child, and from maybe someone you've already taken care of, how they've progressed with you, what you've done for them, how many sessions, or what you do in a session. And also, I can't think of the second question now because I should have written it down. But would you, when it comes to nutrition, like nutrition and things like that, do you call nutritionists or give them contacts for these people, or do you yourself do that kind of counseling?
Regarding the nutrition, I do myself do that type of counseling, and it might also be that we recommend nutritional supplements, and that can be like omega-3. It might be, there's so many different ways to help a child. One of the things that we also do, I can also recommend, I'm not a homeopath, but there are certain basic things that we can also recommend. So what happens is when a child comes in, for instance, with ADHD, or at this moment, we have some children that were diagnosed as being on the autistic spectrum, very high functioning on the autistic spectrum.
Right.
And for instance, this is a child that came in, and the moment that we started to work with this child, the moment that there was any expectation, the child was under the table. So basically, then we go under the table too until we get that level of comfort, of trust. And this is a child now who is able to sit with us, who is able to work, who is able to take risks, who is able to also say when he doesn't understand something or thinks that something is hard. Because one of the things that we do when it comes to learning to learn is not so much like you made a mistake, what do you need to do right? But hey, you succeeded. What did you do in order to be able to succeed? If a child understands what they did to succeed, you want to do that again, right? So,
all right, so this child under the table, you've got the child under the table. Now you got him to listen to you and trust you. What do you do? What does the sessions look like that get him to do more?
Child comes in. I have a treatment table here. So there are times that when a child comes in, we'll go on the treatment table. I do testing to see how the child's body is functioning.
Like muscle testing?
No, not even just a muscle testing, like really looking at, like for instance, really how the body moves. And one of the things that we know from embryology, there's an osteopath in Holland who has also developed a whole method looking at embryology. So one of the things that I do when I have a child on the table is, for instance, test the movability. Or the flexibility of the leg, because I know that when a child is very, very stressed and the adrenal gland is working too hard or is exhausted, I know how the leg would react. Or, for instance, the other thing, we know that when the body is under stress or has gone through trauma, and that is in our country quite a few kids, right? Or having made Aliyah as a 1-year-old, you see it. I have them on the table. They sit on the table. I take their trunk, and I'm the one who moves their trunk. When the rotation, according to the embryological rotation, the liver of the child should be moving to the right. When a child can move much more to the left, I know that there is stress on the liver, and that means there's also stress on the spleen, and that means that it might also have to do with the heart. Doesn't mean that there are big problems there. It's not like, oh, your child is sick, but you know that the child is functioning, that the child's body is functioning in a state of non-safety. And then you know that the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that makes us respond to danger in the world in a certain way, you know that is involved. So I would work on all those parts by
movement therapy. You're saying movement therapy.
By movement therapy, yeah.
Do you do craniosacral therapy as part of it?
No, I don't. That is something that I would still love to do, but it's also a matter of, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's and then the child comes and sits with us, or me or my husband sits at the table, or plays, because that's also very possible depending on the age. Like, we have all kinds of toys and games, and
you play therapy kind of too, right?
It is really like what gets the child going. We use instruments that are developed by Professor Feuerstein and really work on learn to learn, or on the thinking skills. But if you have a child that reacts immediately negative to a piece of paper because it reminds too much of school, then we have to find a different way. So it's like with every child, it's like you have to keep thinking outside of the box. And I think that that's what we do the whole time.
Wow. Yeah. And you see a lot of successes, it sounds like.
We see a lot of success, yeah. And obviously, I mean, I'm very straightforward and very honest. There are also children where we haven't seen success. There are children where I feel the success could have been much more, but you are also looking at the ability of parents to consistently do the exercises at home, or to really follow through with the nutritional advice. But we have one child here now that we've worked with for over a year. Our program is 7 months. Okay. After 7 months, we very often see this is a good moment to stop, or there is change, constant change happening. Yeah. We want to do more. But we have one child that had constant outbursts. And does she not have outbursts anymore? No, absolutely not. But it's so much less, and she's functioning, she's succeeding. There's so much growth that the world.
Sometimes 7 months is not enough. Sometimes it's a lifetime of a childhood time of as they grow and develop. You have to change the therapies or change the focus, I suppose, right?
Right. It's like what I said to you before, before we went on. I think that there's a lot of overlap with how you look at the body, and right. It's like I always feel that we could do kids a real disservice only looking on the outside, which is one of the reasons why I'm passionate about what I'm doing. I feel there is a real injustice in looking at the child, thinking that the child will respond like any adult and have the tools to deal with everything that comes to them. But we judge kids on the outside. We judge them by the behavior. We judge them by their performance. But it doesn't mean that the person is less or has less ability when they have difficulties in this area, which is why I push again and again and again to look at the whole child. Because that's when the child comes in, the moment they walk in, they are validated for whom they are. We see that again and again and again, because you meet a person You don't meet the difficulties. You're dealing with a person, a full, whole person, a whole world in and of themselves.
It's beautiful. And so do you have to keep yourself consistent? I suppose you must have a checklist of different categories you will cover, like behavior, nutrition,
Yeah,
parental support,
yeah,
school issues,
yeah, yeah.
physical ailments or something like this, right? And you cover
We
all
have
those.
set up exactly. We have set
Yeah,
up our own protocol of how
right,
we go through an assessment, depending on the age.
right, of course, right. Right, you're not going to be playing with a 15-year-old, but you do see kids who are
Well,
15-year-old.
you know what? Actually, it's not true because we have had big kids here who come in and who look longingly at the stuff that we have here. Like,
That's so
and
cute.
why not? Why not? Right?
Adults like to play also games and things like
Yeah.
that. Why not? Why
Exactly.
not?
Well, there is scent play. Like there's a lot of art therapists that use scent play therapy, and they
Right,
use it with adults to deal with trauma
correct.
because it's safe. It's a whole different non-verbal way of learning and changing. Yeah.
Wow. So if I had a little child that I was concerned about, like a bad behavior, a terrible behavior that is unacceptable to society, let's say, even if I could tolerate it, but kid's not sitting still in school or he's fighting with his friends a lot. I tell you what, every one of my kids could have come to you for different reasons, but they were all wonderful and amazing. And they had
Right.
miniature like learning issues. One had several, was on the spectrum, and I could talk about her freely. I'm not talking behind her back. My daughter was told by Johns Hopkins in America that there was no hope for this child. There were no academic plans for this child. That in writing, I have it in writing, and that she would never amount to anything. I should pretty much lock her up and throw away the key.
I
And my daughter
totally,
tonight I'm taking 16 people to in a van to see her star in a play at the Habima, which is the biggest theater in Tel Aviv. I want to cry telling you this because we didn't give up on her. And we made our own program, and you have it all under one roof. But we never gave up. We never gave up, and we found her what she needed, to succeed.
but there's something very essential in what you just said. And I think that's the key to everything. You believed in her. It makes me so angry when in the medical or academic world, they who are you? You're not God. You don't know what the future is of this child. The fact that you believed in her, that is the essence of every child that every child has the right to have somebody in their lives to believe in their possibilities. Like that is even more important than all the help that you can gather in. So
or
that's
even
another.
or to believe that there is a future, because if they would have merely only said to me, we don't know where your daughter's going to end up, but try to put everything you can into her now and do the best you can to give her whatever resources you have available to you, if it fits into the family scheme and so on, without making everyone else suffer. But we know that there can be improvements. We just don't know what they are, but don't give up. That would have been, I would have been able to live with that a lot better. And there are parents that probably walk away and say, oh, I'm not going to put anything into this kid because they said so. And that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart.
Exactly. So the parents that we get in are usually parents like you who say, wait a second, I see my child. And even though people are not hearing what I am seeing, I'll push for that. Baruch Hashem, thank goodness that parents are like that. Mamash.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for this. I think this calls for another interview on more in-depth conversation. But if people want to reach you and bring their child to you, they can connect with you at this website. But also, you are only in Jerusalem, right? Jerusalem area. But you can do
at this moment we're only in Jerusalem.
Yeah. But if they connect with you on your website, they can get your personal email and all that stuff. So they can, if they're out of the country or not in the same city, you can help the kids also online, or the little ones probably not, right?
Then the physical part and the testing very much depends on the parents. I have to work very closely and guide the parents there. So is the best to come here? Yeah, absolutely. But if that doesn't work, that doesn't mean that nothing works.
Right. I think I would find it very valuable, and I will make sure people do know that it's valuable just to have a conversation with you, because you can probably be that person to consult with, to direct a person in their own hometown what to do possibly, and not to give up, obviously, too, because that's something that you need someone who's just in your corner, and make you feel like it's not all is not lost, and
exactly.
I feel very optimistic And I think that you're realistic. You're realistic also, which is important.
Yeah,
and so
I
it
don't.
doesn't work on everybody. Just by saying that there's some people that don't belong in your program, that's already telling me you're very realistic.
Yeah. No, and I don't. I don't. Anybody who says that they have 100% success, I don't believe, because that's
yeah, I know people like that. Anyway, thank you so much for giving us your precious time today, Hanna. And please contact Hanna at www.neuro-fun.com. And she's in the Jerusalem area, but she'll be happy to talk to you from a distance. And we hope that this little interview will get you some more, get the word out about how wonderful you and your husband are. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll elaborate on something again soon, I hope. Don't hang up yet, because I want to talk to you afterwards. All right, ladies, okay.